Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining this lecture series. This is a continuation of the lecture series that we have had. In this session in this class we are discussing about Hans Morgenthau's realist theory of international politics, which he discusses in his work Politics Among Nations. Hans Morgenthau discussed 6 principles of international politics, the first principle being politics is governed by objective laws which have their roots in human nature. The first principle of political realism holds that politics, like society in general, is governed by objective laws that have their roots in human nature. Human nature, as described by scholars, classical realists like Thomas Hobbes or Niccolo Machiavelli, human nature is selfish, self-centered, egoistic. In fact, Thomas Hobbes, in his work Leviathan, painted a very dark, gloomy picture of the state of nature. When he discusses social contract in his work Leviathan, he starts off with the state of nature. Just give me a second. Thomas Hobbes, in his work The Leviathan, talks about the social contract. And when he discusses social contract, he starts his social contract with the state of nature, which is a hypothetical state, where he describes the excuse me, where he describes the state of nature, human nature, as selfish, self-centered, egoistic, greedy, and man will do only to secure power, will go to extent of helping others, or will contribute to this to the good of society only to secure power or only to serve his national interest. Thus, this is further carried forward by Niccolo Machiavelli in his work The Prince, and he states that the prince must be cruel, must be cunning, must be courageous. All this in context of power or in context of securing national interest. Interest, again, when we discuss further, interest again is described in terms of power. Nations in international politics will always define and act for securing their national interest, and this is done with the help of power. Power in international politics is the guiding principle. Power is the ideology. Power is the guide, the ideology, the ultimate goal in international politics. In international politics, nations has little to do with the ideology, which ideology a country follows. As a result of which, that is why Deng Xiaoping, the father of Chinese economic revolution, has this to say: it does not matter what's the color of the cat so long as it catches mice. It does not matter whether the color of the cat is black or green or white or what. It does not make sense so long as it catches mice, is what Deng Xiaoping was trying to put. In other words, when we try to understand it, he's trying to say that it does not matter what ideology a country follows. A country may be following communism, liberalism, capitalism, or liberal democratic system. It does not matter so long as it secures the national interest of a country. Deng Xiaoping, in fact, opened up the Chinese economy to the world. It is he who capitalized Chinese economy, and as a result of which, foreign inflows start coming in. China begin to open up its economy, and you see in the 21st century, China is growing by leaps and bounds, and this is can be attributed to the contribution of Deng Xiaoping in the 1970s and 1980s. Thus, national power and national interest is the determinant of foreign policy. We can also cite another example of the Sino-Soviet conflict, 1955 to 1965, which is not really an ideological conflict because both these countries are communist country. On the contrary, it was a conflict of interest between these two communist states. It was neither the clash of personality between Mao Zedong or Nikita Khrushchev. It was really a clash of interest in the world politics, and this also applies to Cold War conflict between USSR-led bloc and United States of America-led bloc. In fact, when we see the foreign policy of the Chinese, it calls for peaceful coexistence. But when you see the practical reality of the Chinese, and we are a neighbor of the Chinese, and we see how China is engaging in the Doklam issue, the Doklam clash, or the Aksai Chin issue, the Jammu and Kashmir issue, the the uh, Arunachal Pradesh issue and all. China claims Arunachal Pradesh as lower Tibet. And the clash has been happening. The Chinese is not just having issue with India; it has also issue with South China Sea. The Chinese is going for expansive, aggressive expansion towards its neighboring regions. China is doing all this, although it calls for peaceful coexistence. Thus, we must understand that it is the power and national interests are the guiding principle, the ideology in international relations or international politics. It does not much matter what kind of ideology a country follows. That's what the realists will say. The third principle is national interest is always dynamic and it's always changing. National interest is something which is not static. The same observation, when we talk about political realism, they believe in the universal validity of concept of interest defined in terms of power, as we have stated in the previous principle. The politics and actions of a nation are always governed by national interest. And the idea of national interest is the essence of politics in international relations and is unaffected by circumstance of time and place. However, the context of national power, national interest or national power will always be there, will always be the guiding principle in international politics. However, the content of national interest or power is always changing in nature and scope. It is the interest of a nation, interest of India is not static. At one point in time, India's national interest is food supplement. At one point in time, India's national interest is agricultural revolution. It's investing in agriculture, investing in industry. It's befriend with USSR. It's befriend with its neighboring regions. At one point in time, India wants to go along with United States of America being a democratic country. But this all changes with time. And we may never know, in the near future, India and China may also become a close ally to counter United States of America or the Russians. It changes from time to time. All I'm trying to say is, let me cite an example. Security has always been primary part of India's national interest, but the nature of security that India has been trying to secure changes from time to time. When we discuss India's nuclear doctrine, we are for no first use nuclear towards any country. We are to build and maintain a credible minimum deterrence and to inflict unacceptable damage to the enemy if we are under attack. Thus, what I am trying to put here is, yes, this is India's nuclear doctrine. This is India's nuclear doctrine. But you know what recently Rajnath Singh said? Rajnath Singh recently said that India may change its nuclear doctrine if the situation and the environment demands. If the situation and the environment demands, then India can go for nuclear. If the situation demands, then the nation may go for nuclear first use, if the situation and the environment demands. With this, we move on to the next principle, that is universal moral principle. Universal moral principle must be modified according to the circumstance of time and space. State is not expected. The fourth principle is universal moral principle inapplicable. Universal moral principle is inapplicable in international relations. Individual may go for universal moral principles. Individual may say, let justice be done, even if the whole world perishes, but the state has no right to say so. Universal must be modified according to the circumstance of time and space, according to the circumstance, environment that the international politics demands. State is not expected to observe the same standard of morality as observed by individuals. In international relations, prudence and force and not abstract moral principles is the guide. So a country or a state may call for prudence or force if the situation demands. The next principle is difference between moral aspiration of a nation and universal moral principles. Each nation tries to cover its national interest with cloak of several moral principles. Countries' foreign policy are very beautifully clothed with peaceful coexistence, universal moral principles. You can when you see I'll state it again. Each nations try to cover its national interest with cloak of several moral principles. United States of America may talk to counter anti-terror. United States of America may have anti-terror policy in governing, but it's the United States of America's anti-terror policy, although they have anti-terror policy, it's governed by its own national interest, not because the United States of America wants to make the world safe. If that was so, if United States of America really wants to make the world safe for freedom and democracy, then why was United States of America very silent? Why did United States of America remain silent until 1990s, until unless it was attacked? United States of America was attacked in 1990s, 1991, I think it was October, the Twin Tower clash, attacked by the terrorists in 1990s. Why was the United States of America very silent until then? India has been stating to United Nations that, yes, we are under attack. We are under attack from Pakistan-sponsored terrorists every now and then, but United States of America remain a mute spectator, because at that time, we can also say that United States of America at one point in time was also sponsoring the Taliban against the Russians, the USSR. Until 1990s, United States of America was not paying any attention until and unless it becomes a victim of terrorism. Thus, we can say that US anti-terror policy is governed by its own law of national interest, not really based on making the world safe for freedom and democracy. Nations are actors engaged in securing their respective national interest and are not the follower of moral law or moral doctrine propounded by international governments. Moral laws do not apply to state actions. State actions are always based upon national interest and conceived in terms of power. The next point is the final principle, where Morgenthau says the political sphere is autonomy in international politics. It's an autonomous subject sphere as economics, as lawyer or the moralist. The political actors thinks in terms of interest, as the economist thinks in terms of utility. The lawyer in terms of conformity with actions with moral principles. In fact, what I'm trying to state here is it believes in the existence of independent discipline. Political realism has a distinct intellectual moral attribute towards political matters, not necessarily taken from economic or from legal perspective. It has its own independent existence. On the basis of the above 5 principles that we have discussed, that we have been deliberating, it is ascertained by Morgenthau that there exists a real and profound difference between political realism or realism and other discipline or other theories or approaches. Political realism has its distinct intellect moral attributes towards political matters, as a result of which we can say that it has an independent existence. Political realism is neither idealistic nor legalistic or nor even moralistic in its approach to international politics. It is concerned with national interest defined in terms of power. It is concerned with national interest. Political realism for political realist, it is national interest defined in terms of power. Thus, in the very beginning, I state, in international politics, power is the guiding principle, power is the ideology, national interest, they try to secure this national interest with the help of power. Power is the end, power is the means in international realism. Realism seeks to struggle for power among nations, in which every nation tries to maintain or increase its power. So power is the end goal, power is the guiding principle, power is the ideology, power is the beginning, the end in international relations according to the realist. Thank you so much for your kind, patient listening. In the next session, we will be discussing about criticisms or critical evaluation of realist doctrine that we have discussed. Thank you so much for your kind, patient listening once again.